I'm going to get started. I know we have more and more people joining us, but I'm going to get started so that we have time in the breakout sessions and the breakout rooms. And so again, I'm Marta Hernandez. I'm Deputy Director of Californians Together. And I want to welcome you back to the third in a series of English Learners Zoom communities of practice. I'm calling them El Zoom, EL Zoom. And we have just been amazed with the tremendous participation in our last two sessions, which really speaks volumes about the need in the field to connect and to share promising practices, as well as to discuss the challenges we are all facing as we address distance learning for English learners. We know that school closure will have severe consequences for English learners, especially those who have limited access to digital devices and or the internet. And we know that providing comprehensive ELD was a challenge even before the crisis. So this crisis has emphasized the inequities and the gaps that already existed. Today, again, you will meet and hear from just wonderful teachers and administrators from two districts who have been working to implement integrated ELD through distance learning. So as we did in the previous session, you will have the opportunity to learn from colleagues, to share your experiences, to ask questions and raise issues that need to be addressed. And again, we want to stress that we want to hear your voices and to learn what the issues are and also some possible solutions so that we can advocate for targeted support for our English learners during and after this difficult period of time. So again, with the logistics, you can see facilitators. If you are a facilitator, please rename yourselves by adding the letter F to the beginning of your name. Please note that everyone will be muted during the panel sharing. And then following the panel presentation, you will join a breakout room to share integrated ELD practices, resources, and ask questions of your colleagues in the breakout room. And then we will return as a whole group to share those promising practices and to pose those questions. The chat room will be monitored for questions and comments. And again, I did want to say that we are supported today by Ed Campos Jr. and team. And again, we welcome him back. Again, we know that both designated and integrated English language development are really an integral part of a comprehensive program for every English learner in order for them to meet linguistic and academic goals. We put this slide up again. It's the official position from the California Department of Education on the delivery of ELD during school closures, and really it's during school closures and when school is open. And again, we know that English learners must continue to receive both designated and integrated ELD as part of their curriculum. However, we know that districts have the flexibility and they can determine when and where and what students receive in order for them to make progress towards their English proficiency as well as meeting those grade level academic standards. And again, we remind you that there are no minimum number of minutes required, but ELD is considered a core subject. It's a required course of study for English learners. And so with that, we are ready. I know that we have now over 232, 33 of us on the Zoom. And so we just hope to uplift your voices. And so please, really, we want you to participate actively, submit your comments in the chat box. As you know, we capture all of those comments. And again, if you haven't yet, complete the survey we sent earlier after attending this session. And so we are going to begin with our talented and hardworking and enthusiastic teachers from Grossmont High School District. We have Amber Riemann, who is a social science teacher and an English learner coordinator. She's been working on her master's degree in critical thinking and social injustice, focusing really on the implementation of the EL roadmap. And presenting with her, we have Maxine Sagapulutele, an English and ELD teacher, and she is also an English learner coordinator and has a master's in policy studies in language and cross-cultural education. And of special note, Maxine is one of our incredible 13 English Learner Leadership and Legacy Initiative Fellows. And so at this time, I'm going to give it to Amber and to Maxine.
Thank you, Martha. It's so great to be here to share our journey in supporting Tier 1 tools for online learning. This is an organic byproduct that came out of our work. And today we're going to focus a little bit on online collaborative discussions and what that looks like. Over the past few years, our site has provided awareness training on the California English Learner Roadmap policy. It's been done through traditional professional development and also open door observations. However, wanting to level up, Maxine and I went to the California EL Roadmap Toolkit Institute, which was held at San Diego County Office of Education back in January, where our presenters gave us a little bit of homework. And we were charged basically to gather feedback from our colleagues about what we really needed to implement or make the implementation a reality at our site. And thus our PLC was born. So we have this EL Roadmap PLC, which was really meant to be this grassroots collaboration among the teachers at our site. In order to really honor the roadmap, we wanted it to be this assets-based and needs-responsive PLC where teachers really felt empowered to share their strengths and identify areas of need, whether it be kind of systematic resources that they need from the district or just collaborative support from our colleagues. And the Bitmojis here kind of represent some of our teachers who are on the PLC. And we really wanted it to just be this lighthearted, fun experience where teachers felt that their voices really matter. At our first PLC meeting, I created this guide to help facilitate a deep dive into the toolkit. We really focused on principles 1 and 2, and our meetings allowed teachers to really reflect on current practices and discuss ways we could build on each other's strengths individually and collectively, and collaborate with each other to add elements to the toolkit into our practice. Here's an example of the toolkit that we were using, and it was really great to hear the rich conversations that developed in the self-reflections happening during this time. As we went through the indicators, conversations were sparked about what these items could look like or does look like already within our classroom and our community. And an example of some of the discussions was a teacher asked, do you make time for home language discussions in your classroom? So it was really great to open up that dialogue and hear each other really talk about what it looks like in our classes. So always leveling up, we really needed to take our practice to the next level. So through our theory and the reflections of going through the toolkit, we really needed to take it into the classroom and really practice it, right? So theory to practice, or praxis, right? This connection to MTSS came out of an organic need for a school-wide support outlined in Principle 3. With the goal of creating assets-based and needs-responsive systems of support for integrated ELD instruction and interventions across departments, across the school. And so basically what we did is we went through the toolkit and pulled out actions for Tier 1 instruction, what we thought that would look like. And you can see that there are 2 different categories, academic tools and behavioral tools. And from here, I went through and collected themes with the idea of creating some sort of menu that would help in this integrated ELD work. And so we were well on our way, and then we were sent home. And so our PLC decided to continue our work via Zoom, and then kind of transition our model into what does integrated ELD Tier 1 instruction look like online. And so this is what our tool menu looks like. You can see here it says EL Roadmap Tools for Online Learning. And each button is linked to a resource page that talks about different items that you could use online. As you can see, there are a variety of different strategies to choose from, which are all linked to a resources page. And some of them you can see like practical things you could use, writing scaffolds, and also more theoretical pedagogy items such as culturally responsive teaching online. Again, all of our resources page follow the same format. Here is an example. This particular one is a guide for culturally responsive teaching. The first part is set up for the user to learn about the topic. And so we have a brief overview, we have connections to the roadmap, and we also have deeper learning. So it's kind of set up as a scaffold for our teachers. If you know a lot about this item already, you can do some deeper learning. If you just need a little bit to get by, you can look at the overview and also the connections. And then the second part is ways to implement. So we wanted this to be very practical. And so the top half is just in general, how can you implement this? And then the bottom, it says getting started online. So how could you use this tomorrow with your classes? This is just another example of a page. This one's focused on using home language to promote access. The ways to learn show benefits of bilingualism and translanguaging. And the ways to implement kind of guides teacher in facilitating home language discussions. And so our next page is about online collaborative discussions, and my colleague Maxine will kind of walk you through that.
Thank you, Amber. So this was a way for us to take the toolkit and actually make it our own, and so that we would actually take those items and implement them. So I'm just going to take you through our thinking and our design as a PLC. So we felt like collaborative discussions are critical, and in our physical classrooms, we have vibrant collaborative communities. And so when we got sent home, we were thinking, how are we going to continue that work online? How are we going to continue to facilitate peer-led discussions? So after establishing the importance, we tried to come together to figure out the ways that we can implement collaborative discussions online. And so I'm going to take you through how we did that. So first, we had to determine the tools that are available to us. Our district supports Google Meet and Zoom. And keeping equity and privacy in mind, we couldn't make these mandatory or required due to scheduling conflicts for our students and other obligations that they may have. But we still wanted to hold space for them to have their peer-led conversations and that they can really delve into the tough thinking together, while also giving them those tools and the language that they need in order to have those discussions. And we also want to keep giving them feedback on how they are meeting the ELD or moving in levels through the ELD standards along that proficiency level continuum. So our PLC pulled these different connections to the toolkit. And online discussions can be tied to many of the other indicators. These were just the ones that we felt like we wanted to highlight. And as you can see, all of the items here are embedded in the collaborative discussions. They're all encompassed in the collaborative discussions because it's really important for peers to keep up with that continual community building. That was one of my fears when we went online, is how do we maintain that classroom community? How do we have that active engagement? And how do we keep providing them the tools to practice their skills? So for the deeper learning piece, we are connecting them to the ELA ELD framework. So we have a link here to chapter 7, and we pulled some highlights. That's what the different colored boxes are, so that our teachers will hopefully get hooked in and want to click on that link and go ahead and get into that deeper reading. So for ways to implement, we have to figure out how are we providing the parameters for our students. We had a lot of questions to answer. How are they going to meet? What are the expectations? Luckily for me, my students are used to having routine collaborative discussions, but I still didn't know exactly how this was going to look online. So for teachers who haven't had routine collaborative discussions, they'll have to do a little bit more work, but it is completely possible, and we want to give them the guidance to help them to be able to do that. So this is an example from my ERWC senior English class. I first reached out to my students when I decided to do this, and we had a little pre-planning meeting because I wanted to see what they thought would work out. And so after that, they reached out to their contacts in the classroom and they formed their own groups. Typically in the classroom, I would form many different collaborative groups for many different reasons. But in this situation, I wanted to be really flexible, and I thought I would be more successful if I just said, here, you choose, you pick your groups. So I actually have the majority of the class signed up on this document, and they all selected their leader, and then they told me the way that they're going to meet. I provided Zoom and Google Meet, but I also wanted to give an option C in case they had another way that they felt they could meet online. And then I just wanted to remind them to be professional. So how's it going for my students? I am super impressed. I haven't watched all of their videos yet. They're turning them in. And so in the classroom, I have a way of giving them feedback. And so I also had to change how I was going to do that online, because we create goals. I listen to their videos, I give them feedback, and then they see if they're moving along that language proficiency continuum. So this looks very similar to the tool I was using in the classroom. We just spruced it up a little bit to go online. And the difference is where you can see comments 1, 2, and 3. We actually have a place there where you could use Read and Write Google to give verbal feedback like you would in the classroom when you're handing them the paper back. But on here, there's the actual feedback I gave to my students. This is a real example, and then her actual response. And so last semester, they had multiple attempts to move in this standard, and I want to make sure I keep giving them that feedback and that support, and that they can also keep measuring their growth this semester online. So for getting started online, we gave our colleagues a lot of questions to answer. But the first thing we wanted to do is just really survey students. What is their experience with online collaborative tools? That's why when I decided to do this, I had that preliminary meeting with my students so I can kind of gauge what tools they felt comfortable with. If the teacher wants to be involved, you could do a Zoom and have breakout rooms just like we're doing today. And so these were the questions that we wanted our colleagues to answer before they get started, so that they can provide that intentional language instruction before they go ahead and launch their online discussions. So last week we had our first Zoom staff meeting, and brave Amber, she shared this tool with our staff, and I was very proud of her. And so our next step is to keep meeting as a PLC. We are meeting weekly, and we're going to continue to add to the tools and refine the menu. And we keep telling our staff that PLC is always open, and just please email us for more information. So if you are excited about this tool, our PLC is very willing to share it. You can use it just as it is, knowing that we're still developing it and it's still a work in progress. Or you can actually just take the tool as a template and have your own collaborative PLC around this topic. So either or. So to end this, we just want to give a special thanks to our EL Roadmap PLC team, our El Cajon Valley High School community, and of course, Californians Together for creating the toolkits, for providing those teacher toolkit institutes, and with the county offices, and for everything that they do for us. We're really honored that you asked us to speak here today.
Thank you. I want to give a virtual round of applause to Amber and Maxine for their teacher leadership and their focus on comprehensive ELD and the implementation of the roadmap. So thank you very much. And so now we have Anaheim Union High School District, and they have enabled teachers to engage through their COVID-19 capstone project. And to talk about this initiative, we have Dr. Jaren Freed, Dr. Renee Bryant, and Mrs. Diana Fujimoto. Dr. Freed is the Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services at Anaheim Union High School District. He started his career in the district as a special education teacher, has served as an assistant principal, and now leads the department charged with delivering educational services to students across the district. Dr. Bryant is the Director of English Learner and Multilingual Services and an outstanding member of the English Learner Leadership and Legacy Initiative, ELD. And in her current role, she is responsible for increasing English Learner and Multilingual achievement through English Learner, World Language, and Dual Language programs across the district. Mrs. Fujimoto is the Curriculum Specialist for the EL program and AVID, after having served as a national AVID trainer. And she is key in the implementation of a variety of district initiatives such as the Parent Learning Walks and the Summer Language Academy. So, Dr. Freed.
Yes, thank you, Martha, and happy Tuesday, everyone. Happy Cinco de Mayo. I know on behalf of Dr. Bryan and Ms. Fujimoto, we are excited to be here to share the great work our district is doing. I must apologize, I do talk fast, but I know we have a limited amount of time, so that may actually be a good thing. Also, rest assured on all of our presentation PowerPoint, we do have many things hyperlinked. So if we cover things that seem a little bit quick for you, you will have the time to explore and go deeper with those concepts at a later time. I want to start by talking a little bit about our district and who we are. We are a large 7th through 12th grade district, a large urban district in the city that serves 5 cities, our largest being Anaheim. You may think Anaheim next to Disneyland, the happiest resort in the world, right? But we do have 2 Anaheims. We have many students who live in poverty, who live with great challenges. As you can see, we have about 14% of our students who are homeless. Again, serving 5 cities, 70% of our students do qualify for free and reduced lunch, and 22% English learners. In our district, we have over 54 languages being spoken. So as you can see, we're a diverse district, but our challenges are great. Also, we're real proud. We do have a Spanish DLI at 4 of our sites, and the first secondary Vietnamese DLI at 2 of our sites, and that's the first secondary DLI in the country. So very excited about the great work that we're doing in our district. I want to spend a little bit of time before we talk about our COVID capstone project in terms of how we are supporting our integrated ELD for English learners, giving you a little bit of a greater sense of who we are as a district and what our drivers are, because I think this is going to help you better understand how we got to the place where we could pivot so quickly. In our district, we have a deep focus on what we call the 5 C's. As you probably know, in the frameworks of our standards, 4 C's are deeply embedded: the communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. For us, we've added the 5th C, compassion. This is a driver for us as a district. We work real hard with our teaching staff to ensure that when we teach our content standards, that we do it through the lens of the 5 C's, that how we teach is engaging, but we also develop these skills in our kids, because we know there has often been a great disconnect between K-12, post-secondary, and the world of work. We believe it is our charge to not just prepare kids to get in to their post-secondary options, but to get them through. And really for us, the 5 C's are that driver. Also, we have a deep focus in our district regarding mental health. Prior to COVID-19, I think we can all agree that trauma and mental health was already at an all-time high for many of our students and our families. And obviously with the COVID-19, this has only exacerbated these challenges. So for us, mental health has been something we're real proud of in terms of how we've supported our students and our families, in particular our English learners, moving forward. And I have a couple of links that you can look at later that talks about some of the work that we've done. As a district, we're also very much into systems thinking. We really do believe in connecting our sites with the district. There's a great and strong flow of communication, the way that we approach our work. Renee or Dr. Bryant will talk more specifically about the systems we have in place that support our English learners along the way. But we have district level teams, school leadership teams, and department PLCs all connected with one another in the way that we approach our work. And then lastly, Civic engagement is a big part of our district. We believe too that we are preparing our students to be citizens. And we have done a lot of training with our staff on how we can bring local, statewide, and even federal issues into the classrooms without us as the adults imposing our beliefs on our students. We teach them the skills, again, going back to the 5 C's, and how they can navigate through their own world on the things that they care about. And as teachers, they're able to cleverly connect the world to their content. So what we do becomes relevant and meaningful. So you're gonna learn more about how we did that with this COVID-19 project. And then lastly, you'll see an article that our superintendent, Mr. Matsuda, has written that really talks about student voice and civic engagement in our district. Along with civic engagement, we already have 13 schools in our district out of our 20 that have been named California Democracy Schools. That's in partnership with the LA County Office of Education. But I also know we have 2 more schools, I think, within the next 2 weeks being visited virtually. So we may have up to 15 of our schools now as California Democracy Schools. So we're real proud of that work. And then now this takes me to the innovation idea. So with the COVID-19 upon us, we really saw this as a district as for our students, this is their JFK moment. This is their 9/11. This is when the space shuttle blew up in space, right? This is something our kids are gonna remember for the rest of their lives. And we wanted to, especially with mental health being a priority for us, we wanted to give kids a space to heal and to process what it is they're experiencing, but also connect it to their content, knowing that we still have school remaining, that we still have teaching and learning that needs to ensue. So we really asked our teachers this question: how does the coronavirus affecting your life? And giving them permission to use this as the curriculum moving forward. And I'm proud to say, because of the drivers that I spoke of previously, so many of our teachers took advantage of this opportunity. And now we're giving our students and our families really a safe and healthy way to reflect and experience what it is we're doing as it relates to COVID-19. Dr. Bryant's going to talk more now about the systems and the structures we have in place to support integrated ELD for our English learners. And then I'm proud that Diana Fujimoto is going to spend the rest of the time talking specifically about some of the great work that actually has come out of this capstone project for our students. So Dr. Bryant, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you. So before I start, I just want to thank all of you for what you're doing right now, all this work for crisis teaching and learning, and especially it is Teacher Appreciation Week. So thank you, all the teachers out there, for what you're doing. Before Diana talks more about the COVID-19 project, I wanted to share a little bit about the work that we've done years leading up to this, which has set the stage for that district-wide systemness that Dr. Freed was talking about in service of our multilingual students. What you see here is our EL task force recommendations. The PowerPoint contains a live link, so you'll be able to go to a copy of the document. Our EL task force recommendations were written with our stakeholders in collaboration with Shelley Spiegel Coleman and Californians Together in 2017. They've been updated every year since then. This was the beginning also of the time where we started our site EL task force team. So every single school site has their own EL task force team. And key recommendations on here focus on listening, speaking, reading and writing, integrated ELD, designated ELD, progress monitoring, parent conferencing, as well as the 5 C's that Dr. Freed talked about. The district EL task force meets with our sites 2 times a year in the fall and in the spring. And we bring multiple data points, multiple measures, and have discussions about celebrations in the data and also opportunities in the data. And then each site has their own unique plan that meets their site needs, because we know every site's unique. And then that plan is a plan to help increase the achievement, the success, the equity, the access, the opportunity for our multilingual students. And here in the fall of 2017, Dr. Freed actually gave Diana and I permission to facilitate the belief modules with district and site leadership to further build the capacity of our leaders around EL typology, integrated designated ELD, progress monitoring, and supports for English learners. The belief modules, believe it or not, there's some people that don't know about them yet, so just in case there are a couple of people still out there, they are housed at Riverside County Office of Education, RCOE. There's a live link for them here in the PowerPoint for you. And these modules were facilitated at principal, AP, curriculum specialist, and lesson design coach meetings. In the fall of 2018, the lesson design coaches worked with their site teams and modified these to fit, again, their unique site needs that we knew our multilingual learners had at those sites. And then, as you can see up at the top left, EL shadowing was also rolled out fall of 2018 with formal leaders, teacher leaders, and then site teams. EL shadowing was used to create a sense of urgency around the amount of time the English learners were actually talking in the classroom. From the EL recommendations on the previous slide, you can see that we have a 30% goal. So it really showed our teachers that maybe we weren't hitting that goal yet for all of our English learners. So it created that urgency. And then on the right side, you see Teach Effects. So we use this app to help the teachers measure how much time students are actually talking compared and what they're talking about and what kind of critical thinking is going into that talk and what kind of academic language is going into that talk captured on a phone app. So I've hyperlinked that too, so you can check it out on your own time. And then again, both of those are hyperlinked here. So then, just like the previous team of experts, our next step was looking at the California English Learner Roadmap toolkits. And in 1920, 2019, I'm taking this way back, 2019, 2020, we introduced these kits at junior high and high school. These are also live linked in the PowerPoint, so it's easy for you to get to. The lesson design coaches took these, worked with their sites and their site leadership teams to analyze which pedagogical practices they were actually using, and then which ones were opportunities for their sites to grow, and then created some goals around them to be able to implement and grow. And this is just like the other team. This is about the time that we had to switch to distance learning. So how are we meeting the needs of our multilingual learners now during crisis remote teaching and learning? So we have a language assessment center. Those assessors who would normally be doing LPAC right now, they have been calling 300 plus newcomer families. We developed a newcomer script for them to use, and that's hyperlinked here for you to access. And we have PL, professional learning, that was developed by Dr. Adela Cruz. That's been implemented to our site principals and through our social workers at the sites to the site teachers and staff at the sites through our Google Meets. And we have something that we're using called telehealth that's also been an extreme help for us. And that's hyperlinked for you as well there. And I think that Dr. Cruz may be doing a future webinar on telehealth, so I won't get too deep into that. Like all other districts out there, we have been collecting resources and sharing them with our content teachers. And then we have a newcomer task force. As you know, we have an English learner task force and our DLAC. All of our task force are still meeting. And here I linked something that we've been using before distance learning, and that is our newcomer learning plan. We found it to be very useful, and I've hyperlinked it for you as a resource there. Our sites are facilitating professional learning via our lesson design coaches and other teacher leaders. And then you can see here our EL task force are still meetings, and some of them are even going to the point of calling every single English learner family. And our model is synchronous teaching, office hours, and asynchronous classes. We are a 712 district, that is our model. And as a leadership team, we've been sharing best practices, resources, presentations, screencast articles from not only EL experts, but also e-learning and innovation experts. And I wanted to make sure you had some of those here. And I highly recommend this Kuros, Novak, and Giuliani webinar that I've hyperlinked for you here on distance learning, emergency distance learning. And then Diana's done a great job. We've worked with our translators to make sure that we have screencast interpreted in the top languages listed there. And now I will hand it over to Diana Fujimoto, who will be telling you even more about our capstone project.
Thank you, Dr. Bryant. So as both Dr. Bryant and Dr. Freed discussed, we have been doing quite a bit of work with our teachers, our admin, our staffs around supporting English learners. And so just in terms of instruction, you know, we really had to think, so how do we take all that professional learning we provided our teachers around those best instructional practices for our English learners and shift that to a digital platform, right? How do we take those instructional shifts we were seeing in the physical classroom and apply those same strategies in the digital classroom. And we want to replicate those structures and the routines teachers were using for language support, so that students can access and can engage with the content. And we want teachers to continue thinking of themselves as language coaching, right? Because we know language coaching, it's ongoing, it's diagnostic, so that they can meet the specific needs of their students. We also understand that the need to create that same safe environment that allowed students to be those academic risk takers, in the physical classroom. And so now we need to establish that same safe environment in the digital classroom. And then lastly, we need to think about continuing to celebrate our students' accomplishments with language acquisition, as well as with their learning. And so understand, though, that this is all still a work in progress, but we are finding creative ways to replicate those same classroom practices and routines in a distance learning environment. And so we really wanted to take kind of a laser focus to that principle 2 of the EL roadmap with regards to providing that intellectual quality of instruction, meaningful access, intellectually rich, relevant, but with the instructional scaffolding and support for active engagement. So for example, in the classroom, right, a teacher in the physical classroom, a teacher might have an interactive academic word wall to support that academic vocabulary development. But now with distance learning, our teachers can use the tools that are on our learning management system, our LMS. And so students here in this example are broken up into predetermined color-coded teams. And as a team, they collaborate and they contribute to the discussion, in this case, around healthcare workers. And by adding their own ideas to this communal word bank that the teacher created. And they use this multi-user whiteboard feature provided on our LMS. So these words then can serve, they're student generated. They then become part of the written assignment that will follow this classroom synchronous lesson. And this communal word bank becomes a living resource and for students to reference throughout that writing process. And so again, it's just thinking about how do we create these opportunities for our students to continue developing, but yet in this digital platform. Students in a history class, for example, they're being asked to create these primary source documents when they're asked to document their COVID-19 experience, starting with their initial thoughts on distance learning. In the classroom, a teacher might grab for their graphic organizer tool belt, right, and create a bubble map, an organizer to help get feedback from the students. So in the digital world, in a digital classroom, the teacher might use something like this. They could still use that bubble map graphic organizer to solicit words from the students. And we can also see how they've incorporated the visuals to support our emerging bilinguals. Students, again, can then take this resource and integrate some of these powerful words into their writing, again, with the help of a sentence frame, a sentence starter, and so on and so forth. Their work then, right, being mindful of continuing to celebrate and tap into that classroom community. Their work then becomes part of this class Google slideshow that is shared with their classmates. And it builds, again, that classroom community because students can see what they have in common with one another. And again, you can see how we've asked, in this instance here, the students to highlight what was that powerful word that you chose, from that resource that we developed.
Hey, honey.
Yes. Oh,
Different honey.
different honey. And then in this next example,
Holly, you're not muted.
All right. In this next example here, a teacher might use an app such as Padlet for a student journal writing exercise, responding to a short video clip that the teacher had the students watch. The students then use this technology tool, this Padlet, use that to respond in a journal response. This then becomes a springboard for writing a thank you note to that healthcare worker who was helping with COVID-19 patients, right? And then again, as part of our civic engagement initiative, these students were then revised and shared with an authentic audience. And these were actually sent out to a local healthcare facility. And as you can see here, the staff was very grateful to have received these thank you letters from our students. So again, this feeds into that whole idea of really bringing relevancy into the classroom, still supporting the language, and then with our civic engagement and that authentic audience, just kind of bringing it all back together. So in a nutshell, pivoting to the COVID-19 capstone has really allowed students to engage in meaningful, relevant learning experiences, and teachers, again, they're finding creative ways to integrate the language development through reading, through writing, speaking, and listening. And at the end of the day, though, the students ultimately are given that voice and choice in how they are making meaning of what's happening all around them. You know, whether it's through chalk art, whether it's through the power of photography, or through poster collages, or even through a student-generated public service announcement. The students have various options of how they choose to engage, again, with the civic engagement COVID-19 capstone. All the while, teachers, again, trying to figure out creative ways to integrate language development with the resources that they have at their disposal, and with the resources that the students are most familiar with as well.
Thank you. I think we need to give our colleagues from Anaheim Union High School District a standing O for their commitment to making learning relevant to all students by leveraging their background and their experiences. So thank you so much. I do want to say that they also received the Lynn Aoki Multiple Pathways District Recognition Award, which will be awarded at GABE 2021. And so I want to say congratulations to that. And I also have noted all of the questions in the chat. And so we are dedicating some time at the end of the Zoom meeting for question and answer with the presenters. So if you have specific questions, we'll have a little bit of time for that. And the presenters will go to the chat and attempt to answer some of those questions. So I'm going to start again. We all know the routine. So just raise your hand to share a promising practice or a question. And so we're going to start with Karen Devarin, and I don't know how to say your last name, Karen.
No one does. It's all good. Karen Devarin or Devarin, so it's all good. Thank you.
Okay, Devarins.
Thank you. I wanted to share our group's promising practice was the review preview, which was a phenomenal memory of ensuring that in integrated ELD that we're trying to review the lesson and preview it for our designated students. And so that, and among many wonderful practices that our group had. And I think the question that all of us have is how to reach students who we haven't been able to reach yet, especially with all the many responsibilities students have with working and caring for family. And so just trying to be that support and try to figure out enterprising ways to do that right now. So hope all stays well, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. So now we're going to go with Mary Lonardo.
Hi, yes, thank you. I'm from Orland Unified, which is Northern California, and I'm a para, and I am a library technician. And, you know, we felt like there's some positives with how we are connecting this technology with the students. But our question would be is how can us paras get more involved with helping the teachers with ELs, you know, such as being invited to the Google Hangouts or the Zoom meetings, and we could be used in the breakout classrooms. And we touched a little bit about maybe the, you know, how we're not to be with students alone, but if we were guided in certain questions or just being available for a conversation, that maybe they could use the paras, because I know I haven't been reached out as somebody to use, you know, and I've been getting involved just on my end, watching as many webinars as I can because I have really no books to check out. So I think that's a valid question. How can the paras help the ELs that are already, you know, in the teacher's classroom, and if they're being invited? So it was a good breakout. Thanks for being there.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Thank you. Verity Olaf?
We had a question about how to get them onto the technology. We have issues in our district with hotspots and limited availability of data for videos. But the question towards the end that was really something that we all kind of had a feeling for was, would there be a way either through Californians Together or maybe the Department of Ed to really have subject-specific examples? Because in the past, we would have them written, which is nice wording, but hard for visual learners, especially when you're dealing with integrated ELD or designated. So subject-specific examples like a bank of videos. So the idea of not reinventing the wheel, but just having kind of a compendium of these things that were video-based so that teachers could use those. That was our question.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. Monica Bennett-Gee?
Hello. In our group, we discussed a lot of the scheduling of classes. We had one member who was part of the Anaheim Unified High School District, and so she shared how they're doing almost their entire time and how they're scheduling office hours. That is in a high school, middle school district. I am at a TK 8th school, and we were also doing office hours. We had not discussed paraeducators, but my school is actually doing that, and we utilize them for breakout rooms. So they join a Zoom meeting for synchronous class, and then the teacher distributes the class into a breakout room, and the paraeducator takes half the students, and that has been very helpful for us, just because large numbers of students on Zoom is unwieldy. And we talked about some materials resources, including Rosetta Stone and some other programs.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. We have Erika Marcus.
Hi, so our group, we really came up with an overarching question, which may not be able to be answered, which is how best do we provide an equitable education for our students that tend to be the most in need and have limited resources. And we're wondering if thinking of another way to deliver instruction through printed material or other options should be considered. And we'd really love for that to be thought of, that everyone has access equally.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Didi Camarena. She's on mute.
There we go. All right, so I just wanted to highlight a couple things addressing all the different questions that we discussed. For our first question, addressing integrated ELD, we had some participants that use think time, sentence starters, academic language. But what I loved about what someone said was also they're working with teachers to share strategies and then working together to figure out how this distance lesson thing works. So really leveraging what our colleagues have and taking into consideration what everyone is thinking and how they would like to go about it to build a stronger lesson. For the next question, engaging in listening, speaking, reading, and writing, we Oldies but goodies are Padlet and our Flipgrid for speaking. Additionally, the ELD Toolkit, can't forget about that. It has 5 scales of proficiency in it by Jeff Swears, the king of academic language. And additionally, we have 5 types of listening. And if we could teach our English learners how to listen strategically, they may get more out of what they are listening to. As far as curriculum and materials, for reading and writing, a lot of people are sticking with the core materials, but we also have Pear Deck, any add-ons, Google Forms, and the apps. Some questions that we had were, what types of resources are available for parents to support their students? And we've become very aware of the choice boards that are out there for designated ELD, but we're wondering, how are those going? How are people really using them? Is it their primary curriculum for designated ELD? Is it an addition to it? Is it supplemental? What is it exactly? And additionally, examples of how to integrate SEL into integrated ELD. What does that look like?
Thank you. Mary Ellen?
Some of the promising practices that we shared was the continued collaboration and PD opportunities that we've been able to experience across the state and the country, even to be able to collaborate and put best practices together with so many educators has been phenomenal, and we hope that continues to be the practice that we're able to use. Also, we talked about the benefits of the video recordings for our English learners and giving them the opportunity to have student voice in a less stressful environment where they can submit their recording of their voice when they're ready. We think that that's definitely been a positive, and we hope continues, as well as using things like Flipgrid, Padlet, Zoom, all of those things to be able to share their voices. One thing that we did have questions about was looking for some recommended guidelines for the number of minutes that students should be online in front of a screen, and also the number of minutes of offline work, to try to balance that out, especially with our English learners in mind, knowing the volume of workload that they have and being mindful of what is required and how varied that is across districts and even in classrooms.
Okay, so at this time, I'm going to pause a little bit in terms of the report out. I wanted to give an opportunity to address some of the questions that were in the chat for our presenters and give our presenters a chance to respond. And so we had a question. I'm going to start with Grossmont High, and then I'll go to Anaheim Union. In terms of how are other staffs reacting in terms of the work of the PLN and their receptiveness to the tool that you created. And so I need Maxine and Amber, I guess, unmuted so that they can respond. Maxine and Amber.
Me. Yay. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So when Amber was presenting in our Zoom meeting, it was very similar to this meeting where people were typing all kinds of things on the side in the chat and just saying, you guys are awesome and thank you. And so we need to now share it out with them. So that's our next step. So we're going to meet this Friday. Like, we saw some comments in this chat asking us to share it with all of you, and we're happy to do that, and hopefully Martha can help us do that, but it's not finished. So you might be disappointed to click on some of the pages and there's not a lot there. But this Friday, I think we're going to reconvene as a PLC and see what our next steps are.
Right. So thank you, Maxine. So Anaheim Union High School, we had a question about how much time frame did Anaheim decide is right for students to be studying, learning daily with their distance learning, and is designated ELD an extra or part of the EL students' distance learning day? So I need Renee or Diana Fujimoto to be unmuted. Ed. Renee Bryant. And Diana Fujimoto.
Sorry, can you hear me okay?
Yes, is this Deanna?
Yeah, this is Diana.
Okay, all right.
And the question again, Marta, por favor?
Was how much time frame did Anaheim decide is right for students to be studying, learning daily with their distance learning, and is designated ELD an extra part or part of the student's distance learning day?
So our days, our students are expected to check in. We have 30 minutes for the synchronous learning for their class, 6 periods, right? So, and they're spread out throughout the week. So a student in first period, with their first period class, they'll check in, and it's a 30-minute class. That's the synchronous learning. And then they have the additional asynchronous work. But then teachers are also expected to hold office hours throughout the week, different times, so that if students have additional questions, then they can ask, you know, during whatever office hour times the teacher has set aside. But, you know, being mindful of everything that's going on, you know, in the house, at home. You know, some of our students have had to go into work, right, because they are helping to support the families because their parents were let go, or whatever the case may be. We wanted to be mindful of that. And then the other question with regards to designated ELD, the question again, Marta, was, is it above and beyond?
Yes, is it extra or is it part of the student distance learning day?
No, it's part of the students' distance learning day. So there is that designated ELD time. Our students, our teachers hold for our students as well.
I had another question, and that was the project, the COVID-19 project. What content class were they doing that work?
So the couple of examples that I shared, one was from a science class, a history class, and an English class. But these span any content area teacher was invited to participate in the COVID-19. So there was the permission to pivot, if you will, to this COVID-19 capstone. So it spans all content area classes.
And that was given from our superintendent, Michael Matsuda. So he, with Dr. Freed, they sent a letter giving some explanations, giving some kind of parameters around it, and then gave people permission to pivot to project-based learning via the COVID-19 capstone. And just real quick too, like many districts, some districts had to sit down and negotiate what the distance learning would look like before it actually happened. We have such a good relationship that we didn't have to negotiate, but we did do a sort of a handshake deal about what that would do. We came to the table together and had an agreement about what that distance learning, the synchronous time, asynchronous time, and office hours would look like throughout the week. And we can share that if anyone wants it.
I'm sure that there will be people that want it, Renee, so that would be great.
That
would be great.
Ruth.
And I think we addressed the major questions. There was a question about saying more about how you use AVID strategies with integrated ELD. And I guess that's a Deanna question. Deanna, are you? Yeah, she needs to be unmuted, Ed, again.
I can say real quick, we're really, I mean, how lucky are we that our EL program curriculum specialist is also a trainer for AVID Center, right? Like, we're so lucky. She's so talented. And so we have AVID and AVID Excel. And AVID Excel is a specific program to increase the language proficiency of long-term English learners. So now Diana's unmuted and I'll stop talking.
So really it is about providing the writing, inquiry, collaboration, all those AVID, strategies for success, the language coaching, all of those pieces. Again, we had done quite a bit of that prior to distance learning. So it was just about finding creative ways to carry that same thread, but in a distance learning, platform. So there is quite a bit of overlap with what we provide for in terms of strategies. And again, kind of like Dr. Brian mentioned, kind of marrying the two, bringing the two together. So there is quite a bit of overlap with our AVID strategies embedding those same powerful strategies with our teachers, so then they can provide those same scaffolds and supports for their students.
Okay, so again, I just want to say a big round of applause to both Grossmont and Anaheim Union High School District for presenting. And so just thank you so much. Next slide, Ed. So I just want to highlight our upcoming events. Next week, we're going to be doing Spanish bilingual programs K-5, followed by the Asian languages, bilingual programs K-5. And on the 26th, we will be focusing on immigrant and refugee students. So we do have more sessions that will be announced shortly, and we will email everyone requesting that each of you join our listserv. So you will be receiving, the chat room discussion. And again, if you didn't complete the survey, please complete it. Those of you who would like to serve as facilitators for our May 12th session, please email Shiloneen at californianstogether.org, and we will put you on our list. Next slide. And again, we're going to do the wish in regards to integrated ELD. So in the chat, please, again, put any wish you might have for support for distance learning for English learners by the state or district, school colleagues, or for Californians Together to do advocacy. And I wish all of you a wonderful, wonderful evening and the rest of the week. It's Taco Tuesday, so, some of you might be enjoying a great dinner. And again, thank you so much for all of you who, are participating in these Zoom meetings. It really means a lot, and we love that the community is coming together to discuss these issues. And so again, kudos to everyone. Kudos to our tech team. Thank you, and we hope to see you next time. It's Tuesday, same time, same place, and we hope to see you at that time. So thank you very much. And it's 5:31, so almost on time. Thank you, all of you. Bye-bye.